Afternoon to all.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're able to hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah, fine, good. So let us quickly review a couple of points that we have discussed in the last classes, and then move on to the discussion on the overview of the deep learning for deep learning theory and applications course, and then subsequently discuss few of the mathematical basics. So this is essentially after a brief overview for a couple of minutes, we will move on to the mathematical basics, and let us try to give again a kind of understanding or the broad idea of what kind of mathematics are required to understand the subsequent methods in this course. Right. So can I get some inputs from the students that who were there in the last two classes? So what were the major discussion that we had, especially in the last class, starting from the beginning of last class to the end of last class? What was the major discussion that we had? Yeah, any quick points are welcome. So where did we start the discussion in the last class? None of you remember? Should I ask specifically by a student or what?
Sir, we started with pixel intensities by taking two different pixels there to identify features.
Okay. So why did we discuss about pixel intensities or something like that? So where the discussion has started from?
Features.
From?
Features.
Feature extraction. Okay, or features. Very good. So what kind of features should we consider? So where does the features have come from? So why did we discuss upon features? Yeah, quick answers. These are all not JEE questions, right? Yeah, quick answers. Why did we discuss about features at all? Yeah, Rohit, you want to answer?
Yes, sir. Actually, we started discussing about this feature extraction from the previous class about the history of gradient, I mean, histogram of gradient orients.
Right.
So, what will be the problems we face if we have more features? Like problem, we'll be having a problem with visualization, and also it becomes computationally expensive. Um, in that way, we went forward with taking few images as examples, and we are saying if the features are linearly separable or not.
Okay, good. So you gave the description of what feature extraction things we have discussed. We say we started from pixel features, and then if you take a few, they are not sufficient. If we take all, they are excess to, okay, and computationally intensive. Okay, and then we thought of then we discussed about the limitations. So especially for the different tasks, the pixel features has and so on. But where does this feature extraction has come from? Why did we focus on feature extraction? The discussion on feature extraction. Yeah. Who answers? Me, quickly. Prabhat? Yeah, Sandeep? Yeah, quick answers are welcome. These are not difficult questions, as you know, right? Yeah, Yash, tell.
Sir, we want to find something unique about that specific image so that
Okay.
we can distinguish it from other images,
Okay, very
or
good.
so that we can represent it mathematically also.
Okay, that's all fine. For what you are saying is the features are the ones which are unique. Okay, that you can identify in an image, whatever the template you are looking for. So you are giving about the overview of the task that we do with the feature extraction. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Right. But where did the feature extraction has come from? What is the need for feature extraction? This one application you have said. What is the big picture about feature extraction? Yeah, some quick answers. Sandeep, Avanti, you want?
Maybe it's the dimensionality reduction.
Okay.
Like when we are extracting more features, the complexity of the data gets decreased, so that we can avoid other unnecessary background
Right, good.
features.
So you are again telling what I do with features. So you are not catching my question, or the students, those who know, are not ready to answer, or the class is not ready with the answer. So why do we need feature extraction at all? That's the question. Yeah, now
Classify the image.
right. So for performing any of the automated tasks, okay, we have seen that we need pre-processing, feature extraction, and classification. And then we discussed about pre-processing, feature extraction are domain specific. And feature extraction is very important for before classification. Okay, so then we have considered one of the image processing or computer vision task, okay, of template matching. There we wanted to see in that context, how does the feature extraction play a role? Okay, so what kind of features we should look for? Oh, and even with features we have, how much is the computationally intensive the task is. Is this clear? Is the sequence clear? Yeah, I hope. So then let's move on. So then we said that as we discussed in the previous classes, both feature extraction and image processing are domain specific. Okay, for images, you may need different kind of features. For speech, you need different kind of features, and for text, different kind of features. Okay, and then we said that there are some methods like deep learning methods, which will combine what and what stages. So what is the difference between deep learning methods and the conventional classification methods that we discussed in the last class?
In deep learning, we combine feature extraction and classification.
Right. Deep learning effectively combine feature extraction classification. Okay, it can also combine feature pre-processing to some extent. Okay, that's what we have discussed. Then what we will see now, some of the advancements that have been done with the deep learning methods. Okay, so we will discuss what deep learning is, and then the what are the, okay, how they nicely combine the feature extraction and classification stage in the later classes. Okay, but just to get a motivation, further motivation on the applications of deep learning. Okay, let us discuss and see. Also, the elegance that these methods have. Okay, so see those we in the previous classes we also discussed about different computer vision tasks. You people remember? So I need some inputs on what are the different major computer vision tasks that we are interested in. Just name the task in computer vision that we usually perform or interested in.
Image processing or image segmentation.
Very good. So image segmentation is one task. Okay. So what is image segmentation? Can you elaborate a little bit?
When the input is image, the output will be the labels in the image.
Okay, label at each pixel of the image. Okay, if I have to perform image segmentation here, okay, I say that here is wall, here is sofa, here is curtain, and here is floor, and here is Mickey Mouse, something like that, cat, and so on. Okay, so I give label not just for the whole image, okay, or only for some objects in the image, but each pixel I will try to give, okay, what is it belongs to which class it belongs. That is image segmentation. Very good. So any other task in image in computer vision that we have discussed?
Object detection and instance segmentation also.
Right. So object detection, I exactly want to put a bounding box on different objects. Okay, and instance segmentation, what does it mean? This object detection in some sense. Okay.
We do it at contour level.
Yeah, we give a contour exactly to the object. Okay, and then say that this one instance and this is another instance of the same object or different objects. Okay, something like that. Right? And then what other tasks? Okay, so let us probably, there are other tasks like visual tracking and also depth extraction. Okay, these are the major tasks. But let us start with, okay, the very basic task in computer vision and in fact image inference, image classification. See, image classification has been explored very well. Okay, and then, but the application of image classification was limited to very few classes, in the sense that say digit recognition, where we have actually only 10 digits to classify. Okay, each of the handwritten digit or the digit that we have in the printed documents, we want to put into one of the category. So alphabet classification, English alphabets, we have 26 alphabets. Okay, so we may have actually, since there are some data sets earlier to 2010 on the image classification, which are 100 classes and so on. But once the researchers recognize the power of deep learning, where it gets its efficiency or the ability to learn increases with the data set that we have, people started collecting large and larger data sets. Okay, one such competition put in that direction to collect large data set and also to benchmark the classification models or the classification approaches on this very large data set is ImageNet Large Scale Visual Recognition Challenge. And this has been held since I think 2010, but the data set was started collecting from 2000 or 2002. Okay, and then they collected big data set of 14 million data images and 1,000 classes and made available 1.5 million images and 1,000 classes for this benchmark evaluations. See, till 2012, the deep learning methods were not very evolved. So, and the hardware for implementing deep learning methods was also not very well evolved. So the methods were computer vision methods in some sense. So they are usually referred to shallow approaches, in the sense that shallow refers to the learning network or learning algorithm that is of not having many layers. Okay, it's of very light weight, or it has lesser number of layers of learning. So that is shallow. So they might have used very effective feature extractions that are there in computer vision from images, how to acquire features. Like we said, for face detection, okay, eyes, nose regions and so on are features. Okay, for fish length, width maybe features and so on. So they used to do feature extraction by computer vision and classification by machine learning or the neural networks models or any support vector machine kind of models. And those are the methods that were yielding close to 72% or 75% accuracies. Okay, so the first deep learning method that is referred to as AlexNet, which was run on 2 parallel GPU cards or parallel GPUs, could make it's an 8-layer network, could make an improvement of close to 10% from the conventional computer vision and machine learning techniques. So there has the boom of deep learning has it made. So the accuracy improvement, as you can see year by year having accuracy improvement of 2%, okay, and like 1 or 2 or maximum 3-4% itself is very challenging given the large data set. Okay, so 10% improvement on this bigger data set of say 1.5 million images is really got the attention of all the computer vision and in fact machine learning researchers. And then the deep learning models started evolving. Okay, so say what happened at the initial stages, the concentration of all deep learning and the computer vision researchers as well to develop deeper and deeper or efficient models for classification. So the say each model has some unique characteristics, taking the advantage of how well it can learn from the only output we have and the ground truths we have, how well it can pass on the information that is there at the output to the input. Okay, how well this can be trained for better feature extraction. So these were the main points that people have concentrated in developing the algorithms. And as there are some standard networks that has taken care of one milestone in these points, so they were known to be important and widely even used as benchmark classification networks, and even for in some sense as a basic models to start with for any of the classification tasks. So such known models are AlexNet, okay, and then later VZZ, and then GoogleNet, ResNet, okay, and then squeeze and excitation network, okay, and then subsequently there are other networks. So, and then there is a combination of ResNet and SENet. There is a combination of some kind of, so it has some features, bringing some features here, kind of things. Okay, so in this lecture series, we will discuss the architectural changes. So how does AlexNet look like? So what are the limitations of this network and how they are able to make, this is for example 8-layer network and this is 19-layer network. So when we move to more and more layers, there is obviously more and more challenges that come in learning. So how researchers have tackled them, okay, and how this also will help in designing better networks. Okay, so and there are some developments that are mainly focused on lightweight and or better feature extraction architectures. Which are the models for better feature extraction? And we will also see for bringing once the networks are becoming bigger and bigger, so the computational requirements they need is also higher. So how to bring a corresponding lightweight model? Such things are now in research and they have been some good evaluations in that direction. That we will see subsequently at some point of time. So as the years progress, the deep learning models were able to beat in some sense the human accuracy for classification on this very big data set. And this networks will also becoming much more and more depth. That is, say for example, ResNet is of 152 layers. Okay, something like that. Okay, so this is regarding the classification. once the classification is established on standard data sets, so they have been applied in different other classification methods. So they are applied in astronomy, they are applied in different say cancer detection. They are also they applied for road sign classification and so on. So, and the other elegance of these deep learning models or methods is that once they are learned through a very big data set, they don't extract features of only that data set. But since the feature extractors or the kernels are also trained, they learn the capacity to extract features for even for a new data set. Okay, so there we are learning not just the class labels, we are learning the feature extractors itself. Okay, so in some sense, we know that in image processing, if you use edge kernel, say 1111, okay, 000, -1, -1, kind of Sobel kernel, those who know a little bit of image processing. If we use that, we get the horizontal edges. Okay, so similarly, we may get vertical edges by doing flip of that kernel. So, but by training these models, what we are doing is we are trying to train the kernels itself, as I said, okay, using the output and the error between the predicted output by the network and the actual output, desired output, we will be learning the kernels itself. And these kernel will effectively may extract edges, may extract corners, or may extract many informations that is needed for taking classification in different varied tasks. Okay, so at least there may be dominant kernels which will extract generic features for any image to take a call on classification. And there may be some specific kernels which will do for that particular data set. Okay, so thus they are very easy to transfer the learning that they have done on a very bigger data set to smaller data set. Okay, so as I said, they have been applied to several classification tasks. Not only that, so they are also applied to several other related tasks as classification. In fact, since the classification became so famous, many of the other tasks are essentially put as the many of the other tasks are modeled as classification problems. So for example, if I want to retrieve an image, okay, so if I want to retrieve elephants, okay, in a data set, assume that I have several images. In that images, I want to get the image of elephants. What I do, each image I may give as input, and I want to put its label in some sense. It's not purely a classification model, but with some changes, I try to get the label for that data, for that image at hand. If the image is close to elephant class, then I may say that this image is high probability, this is an image. Like that, I keep giving the probabilities for all the images that I have in my testing data. And in that, I may prioritize the elephant images and say that the top 5 images that have the high probability for elephants are retrieved as elephants images. Okay, so what the conventional handling of the computer vision problems is addressed by posing them as classification problems. Okay, so there are several other problems that are also posed as classification problems. For example, I may want to track a car. Okay, so what I do, in the image, I want each of the patch in the image, I will try to put it to a classification model, give it to a classification model and ask whether this is a car or not a car. Okay, so each patch is a sample. I'm trying to say, is it a positive sample, that is car, which I want to track, or not car, let it be background. Okay, so negative sample. So this is a classification problem. So in fact, my problem may be tracking a car or a person from frame to frame, but I pose it as a tracking problem. I pose it as a classification problem. Okay, hope you got the point. This is very important clue. In fact, in developing the algorithms, so there are some algorithms which are very well established, okay, very well developed. So what the computer vision, in fact, has been doing even since long is that posing it as the known problem. See, even for example, in many of the computer vision tasks, they want to say, they mathematically model the cost function. That means if I want to find optical flow. That means a per frame to frame, how much a person moves. I want to find. See, I know that how to find a template matching. If you give a template, how to know? I know how to find out where is it in the image. That I know. Given a template, I know where I can find how to find that in an image. That we know. So then this optical flow means from frame to frame, how much movement each pixel had. If I want to bring that, what we do? Say each patch I will take, where is its template, I will try to check. Okay. And then this is the motion I give. Similarly, I may find this and say that this is the motion I may give. Okay. From this, I may say that this is the motion. Right. So, and for each of them, you may have a mathematical model and you just optimize the overall mathematical model by known optimization techniques. So posing an unknown problem to a known problem is very well known and widely used. So even in deep learning, that evaluation has happened. Posing many of the computer vision problems like image retrieval, tracking, okay, and even many other problems, even fact segmentation as well in some sense, as classification problems. Okay. So this is another advancement that has done in deep learning methods. And there is slightly different frameworks that are required for object detection. Okay, so for example, if I want to detect where the object is, it is not good enough just to say what class label it is. I also need to tell where exactly this object is located, horse is located. So in addition to classification, that is classifying to class 1, class 2, class 3, what else do you think we need in such kind of problems? Any quick answer? In addition to classification, for object detection kind of problems, what else should I learn? Or what other kind of conventional machine learning methods I should bring in here? A quick answer is welcome. So none of you know?
Detection.
Okay, detection itself I want to perform.
Sir, with classification, we need to find the bounding box. What that
Yeah,
regression
that's agreed. So I need to tell each of the patch whether it is dog or not dog. But in addition to that, if I want to exactly locate XY and HW of a dog, okay, what other machine learning method do you think I should bring in here?
Regression.
We need to bring in regression because I need the real coordinates of where the object is starting and how much is the height and width. That's all they have brought. So along with the deep learning of feature extractions, okay, with the deep layers, and what they brought is a classification branch and a regression branch. Okay, so if I want to perform additional tasks than classification in a given object to, just bring in the additional branches appropriately to perform that task. That's what people have done. Okay, so is this clear? So object detection essentially has the classification and regression together in some sense, nicely blended. Okay, so similarly, instance segmentation, they have in some sense the detection and then probably segmentation and classification together. Okay, so each instance has to be exactly identified, right? So to some extent, it mimics the detection for localizing. After that, it exactly tells at each pixel what is the class label. Okay, some kind of architectures like that have evolved. And even in object detection, the deep learning has made a mark. So it has shown that, say, since the last, in fact, decade before the deep learning has evolved, the accuracy is raised from, say, hardly to 40%. Okay, and after the deep learning methods and models have evolved, the accuracy is reached up to 80%. And mean average precisions have reached up to 80%. So once we discuss these tasks, it is also important to know what the quantifying metrics for evaluating them as well. Okay, so for example, for classification, percentage of accuracy in classification is fine. And in some other classifications, dice score and few other recall, precision and kind of metrics people use. For regression, for object detection, mean average precision is used. Precision means how close you are to the location of the bounding box. Okay, so we will exactly define them in the subsequent classes. Okay, so there are some other there are some other tasks which build upon these tasks. Now the advantage we have is deep learning models not only can extract features, but the combining with other deep learning models, they can nicely encode the information in a sequence as well. So one kind of deep learning models like convolutional neural networks extract features very well. The other kind of deep learning models like recurrent neural networks have sequence to sequence mapping and prediction. So through these two together, there were several other models that now brought the image inference much more effective. See, image inference means what? If we have an image of a class, a lecturer is standing and delivering a lecture there, and some students are sitting there. So what essentially we want to if you are asked to describe that scenario, giving just an image, we first identify someone is standing and writing somewhere, so it's a teacher. And then we detect each person and say that students, okay, taking some notes, assume that, okay, and then we have teacher and students there, and then there are some board. With that, we say that it is a class, so ongoing class, something like that. So that is the image caption or giving description to the scene or the image. This is very, very important, and there have been hardly great success in this, okay, before evaluation of deep learning methods. Now with deep learning, it also has gone to a very good state where the image captioning can be given with very good accuracies in most of the cases. So this is the image captioning where you can see that, of course, there are still limitations because each of the object detection models can learn only specific classes, not all classes. And even the learning for image captioning also requires object detection results and anyway understanding the say vocabulary mapping in some sense. So now the focus has been on the data set generation, and then people also have generated good data sets and big data sets. But now the interest is also on how do we leverage to bring it or make it in a large scale. Leverage the existing ones and to make it in a large scale. For example, if object detection is only applicable now for 80 classes, can we make some zero-shot learning kind of things without much samples where we have trained where we have actually the labels, can we still perform this kind of task, okay, in new scenarios? So this is previously, as I said, each of the computer vision methods were tackled, in fact, reasonably different ways. Now deep learning has made a mark even here. So to have a common algorithm setup or common architectural setup, at least to a major part, and then fine-tuning few of the things to make the application happen. So this is actually what this is pose identification of pose, human pose here. See, what we are trying to see is, we define a predefined number of poses. We say that actually a person is dancing here, okay, he's sitting here, and a person is trying to fight here. Assume that he is again dancing or sitting, something like that. So, and they may also have arms stretched, okay, arms lifted or something like that. So we give some specific classes. After giving them, the task is how do we categorize the actions a person is performing? Okay, how do we classify the poses a person is performing? Okay, so how do you think we will go ahead for this? Any idea before I give some details on this? Any quick idea is more welcome. Say I want to detect whether the hands are folded, okay, or hands are put apart. So how do I do that? So this is just let it be two tasks. Unfolded and folded hands. That's all I want to recognize. What should I do? Just go by your intuition and give some ideas to me. Okay, I don't need the exact answers.
First, I guess identifying some key points, like which might.
Right, very good. So we identify key points. Can you give some examples of key points here in this task?
Like for the hand movement, you can like one maybe the elbow, then other maybe the wrist and shoulder.
Right. Okay. So assume that now 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, 5, 6, 8 key points I have identified. Then what do I do? Then what should I do?
Like based on the position of these key points, like relative position, we can.
Right. Based on the position of these key points, I will classify the pose. Very good. So now, if I want to model it as a machine learning or deep learning problem. Okay, machine learning problem. Okay, after feature extraction stage. What kind of algorithm should I use?
Maybe regression, like with the
Regression for each key point. That's all. Okay, so if I have 8 key points, I have 8 regression somehow coordinates of 8 points that I want to regress and get their locations. Based on that, I will make a subsequent assessment of classification. Correct? So that's how exactly the things happen. Okay. So even in gaming, they have played a good role because RNNs have the provision to predict. And there is other wing of deep learning or machine learning, that is reinforcement learning. So that also have gained reasonable importance, and then the evolution and that also is applied very well. In fact, so there are some deep learning models that beat the best players or best existing gaming scenarios. So they are very well known for that. So this is again the pose estimation. So you can exactly tell who is giving what pose as well. Okay, you can perform instance segmentation and also can view the poses. And there are parallel efforts that are spent on understanding these deep neural networks. So they are doing anyway some mystery. Okay, and these networks, as you have seen, started from 8 layers, okay, or 5 layers to 8 layers, and then went up to 1000 layers, 152 layers, 2000 layers. Okay, and inside what they does hardly is known after a depth has been increased after a level. So people are interested to know what they are doing inside. Okay, and how do we make them? What features are they learning? Can I control the features that they can learn, or can I learn the features that I want, or can I use the features in a way I wish to perform a different task? Okay, so they wanted to understand or explain the deep learning that's happening, or the artificial intelligence. Explainable AI is one thing, or similarly interpreting or understanding the deep learning models or machine learning models that they're trying to do. So while doing that, there was some understanding of what they acquire, whether they acquire they learn the texture or the style, some kind of such discussion or some understanding they have gained. From that, there is what we can do is we can get the texture of one image and the style of other image. Okay, so something like that. So it is referred to as style transfer. Okay, so through that there were some artistic applications of deep neural networks developed. So bringing into these kind of arts and so on. But these served as important for understanding the deep neural networks very well. Okay, so in that sense, they are also equally good to know and understand. So many of the computer vision tasks, as I said, can be posed as deep learning methods. Conventionally, what we do is this is referred to as optical flow. So you see now, is there a movement from image to image here? Yes. So this movement from pixel to pixel, we want to quantify. That is referred to as optical flow. Optical flow means at each pixel to pixel, what is the movement of the scene point or the scene patch? Okay, so because in any image, point makes not much sense and patch only makes sense. Okay, as we also have discussed in the last course. So we want to see the movement of the information around each point to the next image. Okay, so that is referred to as optical flow. So now deep learning models also does this effectively. Okay, by learning in similar lines through some kind of encoder and decoder networks, where given both two images, they will encode the features of both images and then somehow compare in the feature level. Okay, what is the difference, and then decode in terms of the motion vectors. Okay, so they can do such jobs. Fine, it's like communication, encoders and decoders. Okay, even here encoder and decoders have developed. Okay, so encode the features or the information and decode what you need. Okay, the result or the inference. Okay, decode the inference essentially. So these are few just other examples. Okay, where of motion estimation. So cloud motion estimation. However, still there are some conventional methods which perform even better or on par in some of the problems. Okay, so for example, here these motion vectors were given by ensemble Kalman filter, not by deep learning models. So in fact, we have seen that none of the deep learning models for non-rigid objects, okay, could perform even to this extent. Even the state-of-the-art deep learning models now. So there is a gap still to apply in different applications and new scenarios. But still deep learning models also can perform and give the optical flows. For this kind of, these are non-rigid objects where we may or may not have the ground truth as well appropriately. So that's one thing. So there are other applications, as I said, visual tracking. So this also can be applied in different scenarios. And there are several challenges related to each of the tasks. So for example, occlusion is one challenge, even for detecting a person or even for tracking more, because we consider in each frame we want to track or they give the location of a particular person or an object. So if the person is not there, even in 10 frames, it doesn't matter. We consider still that we want to track him after 10 frames at least. Okay, so how do we track is a question. And there have been several, these are conventional methods but now conventional methods to deep learning, there is a good advancement even in tracking. So this is depth estimation. Similar to optical flow, here also we have left and right images. How do we get depth in from images is similar to our eyes. Modeling the eyes are done through two cameras, left and right camera. Each of the camera looks at a scene point, okay? And the scene point, whatever you see, will have projection differently in left and right eyes or left and right cameras, because the position of cameras are different. The projection also will be at different locations, relatively different locations. I mean, so if it is 10,10 in this camera, it may be 10,12 in this camera. So there is a relative shift that happens between these two cameras, the projection of a same scene point in these two cameras. Okay, and that relative shift varies based on the position of the scene point. That means if scene point is far away, then the shift will be larger or smaller. If the scene point is nearer, then the shift will be. So how do you think? The nearer objects will have more shift or farther objects will have more shift? Quick answer. You got the point or not, first of all? Yeah, no is also a good answer, but I need some answer quickly.
Object near to the camera will have more shift, or near to the eyes will have more shift.
Yeah, so object nearer to the camera will have high shift. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to extract the 3D information of the object. Say if there is an object, we want to tell what is the length. Okay, what is the distance at which the object is there? What is the height of the object? That is fine. But what is the hitch and like the width of the object and all those aspects? So in fact, we want to know the 3-dimensional information about the object. This is important for what kind of applications? Can you name an application which needs this very critically? Any one application where
self-driving cars.
Yeah, autonomous cars needs it very well because we want to know how far the object is and what the object is. Okay, so it may be car or person and so on. Okay, and how far also we need very exactly. Okay, so the person is how far or whatever. So road rails are how far and so on. All these guardrails are how far. We need all the information of 3D while driving. So for that, one image is not very sufficient. It can also give the depth from a single image given some other cues. But 2 images will give more accurate and absolute depth. Okay, so from the left and right images, we try to see the scene point shift in left and right images. So essentially to find out the scene point shift, what should we see? Can you give an input? Say for example, I want to know this nose of this Mickey Mouse or this nose of this toy. I just want to find out, okay, how far it is from my cameras. What should I do? Tell me. Can you quickly give a small intuition on that? I just want to know how far from my cameras, okay, to this scene. This is a single scene, right? So this is a single scene where this toy knows how much far it is from the cameras. I want to get. Any idea on this?
Sir, we can use parallax method.
What is that?
So like we can make a triangle from the
Okay.
camera and the 3 points of there are 3 points of the triangle. One point is the camera and other 2 points are the position of the nose of that teddy bear.
Very good. But the question is, where do I know how do I know exactly where the nose of this toy is?
So we have to represent the image as a coordinate on a coordinate axis, so that we
Okay,
can know
but
x and y.
No, but how do I do it? That's the question, right? See, for example, if I can simply start from 0, 0 anywhere. Here 0, 0, assume that. Okay, and then here also 0, 0. Okay, then what should I do? Give me a little more intuition on it. See, if you see ideally, okay, I don't know whether you are able to see or not. So this is smaller. Okay, from here, this end, if you see, this is slightly narrower than this one. Okay, this is a little far. This length is higher than this length. Do you agree with me or not? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Right. Even here you can see. Okay, this one is this here. If you see, this is bigger. Okay, even here, this is bigger than this length. Correct. So now what should I do to exactly pinpointly make the triangle? You are correct. If I know exact coordinates, okay, and then make the triangle, I can identify. But how to identify exactly for this point? Okay, where is the corresponding point in the right image? I need to find out. Because what I can do, I can put one of the left image or right image as a reference and start with that. So if I put the left image as a reference, I try to see where this point is in the right image. Okay, I will search in the vicinity of this. Say if this point exactly, say this point maybe from here starting, okay, 100, okay, 200, 100, 200, assume that. I must be here 100, 200 in this image. I will start around, I will search around this 100, 200 and try to find where the exact match for this point or the patch around this point occurs in this image. Do you understand or not? So that's what I do in finding the correspondence of this patch in the other image. Once I find the correspondence for each of the and every point, I know this for each and every point there is one triangle. From that I can get the depth information. Is this clear? Is this clear or not?
Yes, sir.
This establishing this correspondence needs what? So if I want to establish for each point, where is the corresponding point in the other image? It needs what? What does it need? Any quick answer? I want to know where this point is in this image. Okay, where this point is in this image. I want to know where this point is in the image. For every point, I want to know like that. Even this uniform region also, I want to know roughly where it is. Not roughly, exactly, I want to know where it is. How do I get it? Or what is the procedure to get it? Any input?
Some filter or kernel?
Kernel fine, but that's okay. But kernel, how does it help? So before even going to kernels and so on, what is the simple say if I want to get exactly where this leaf is? Okay, this leaf I want to get here. What should I do?
Like by correlations.
Correlation essentially I need to do, but at how many locations? At how many locations should we do correlation?
That particular row.
Oh, in that particular row, fine. I will search is in the particular row. exactly the image like cameras are horizontally fixed. So shift will be only in X direction in that way. But at how many points should I search for the corresponding points? That's my question. Each corresponding point is found by correlation or template matching in that sense. Okay, but at how many points should I do that for getting the depth of this for whole image? Yeah, a quick answer is again welcome. It's clear, right? So I think I thought it should be very clear. So at how many points should I search for corresponding points? Should I search only here? Or only here, or only here, or only here?
At all the points.
At all the points I need to search. So if it is 100 cross 100, then it is 10 power 4 points I need to search. Okay. So this template matching or finding establishing correspondence again has to be done at 10 power 4 points. It is exactly similar to the order of optical flow. Okay, but their search is slightly different. Here is search is slightly different. Okay, or the way in which we acquire the data is slightly different. Okay, so this also can be done through some kind of feature extraction and correlation in feature space rather than in the image space. Okay, so what we have seen in the before, image pixels are not good features, not sufficient features. So deep learning has a capability to acquire better features now. So what we do is now, instead of doing all these operations in the image space or the pixel space, okay, we do these same operations, but in feature space. And the dimension of features can also be much lesser than the image dimensions. In that sense, this may be faster as well. Okay, so in some applications. And once you do this operation, we need to decode the information in a way we need. Is this problems of different computer vision tasks clear? And also the suggested conventional ways of processing them, and also the deep learning way of modeling it. Okay, is that clear or not? You check yourself. Okay, and if you have any questions on that front, okay, I will give now time to discuss. Just let me complete these slides. Probably I think next class we will start the maths. So let us complete the slides this class. Yeah. So this is just a same thing. So there were some depth sensing devices which use maybe 2 cameras or 1 projector and a camera. If I know exactly a projector, okay, which will have some different kind of projections, okay, if it can easily encode what is the correspondence, where exactly the projected light has been grabbed here in image. Okay, so through some projector and image, we can imitate the 2 camera model and can get better depth information. Deep learning methods, as I said, not only just extract the depth information, but also identify the objects through that depth even more effectively. So 3D object detection. So they exactly give not bounding box in 2 dimensions, but they give out a bounding box in 3 dimensions. Okay, and then say that the object is here. This much height, width, and length. Okay, for the object. So these are all can be done in that way. And there are models, deep learning models, which will combine different kind of information and give a nice fusion of the information. Also, because most of the things deep learning, as I said, feature extraction is common part. After feature extraction, we can encode, after the encoding of features or the information in different modalities. This is, say, a LiDAR data, and this is image data, and this is another LiDAR data. Okay, so they, after encoding the information, then some kind of nice blending may happen, and then finally you can get the information in a way we wish. Okay, so it's imitating somehow a building block building block approach for tackling the problems. Okay, so there are even challenging tasks that they can do. So given images, we can get the 3D reconstruction from images itself. So with some like kind of learning going on. So 2D can be input and then 3D can be output. Okay, so usually it is even more challenging task, right? That we have seen 2 images. This is even from a single image. Okay, but for a class of images. So here you can see probably even on video applications, these are now very famous. So where you can see actually from frame to frame what's happening, and then activity, recognizing the activities, recognizing the events and so on. So this is the overview of applications. And as I said, we will start with quick mathematics, quick review of mathematics probably in the next class. So what I would suggest is, do you want me to discuss mathematics explicitly, or shall we go with directly an exam? At least one class, do you think it is better to have a discussion on mathematics? And the next class for exam, quiz on maths? If you don't answer, I think I will take my answer.
We'll have a discussion.
Yeah, so let us have the discussion in the next class. Let me see if I can, without going into the much details, if I can give you what are all the effective things that you should know, or summary of things you should know, that I will try to bring next class. Yeah, after that class, let us make an exam on the Friday. Is that fine for you? So a quiz for on all math basics will be on Friday. So what I suggest is, you don't wait for me to discuss. Okay, I may discuss on Wednesday's class, but I think by now itself you might have seen the video lectures on math basics. Okay, I will not be discussing them in detail, as I said, because we want to spend the time for other aspects. Okay, so we want to repeat the course MLIP here. Okay, so what I suggest is, you each of you, those who have taken MLIP before in the last semester or who has not taken also, should finish. Okay, browsing through all the videos and then understanding them very well. And if you have any doubts, those only we will discuss in the next class. First, I will ask for the doubts in the next class on maths, and then I will try to ask some questions on math, how much you understood. Okay, so we will go for that, and then introduce the deep convolutional networks first, and then some applications of them, and then optimization aspects. Okay, and then some segmentation and other computer vision applications of deep neural networks. Finally, we will discuss also about recurrent neural networks and GANs, some of the recent applications or advancements in deep networks. And here are the references. So even though this book is a main reference, I may not be following strictly on that. So video lectures of Fifi, Lee team, Stanford are good references, which I will be following to a good extent. And then you can see the other references as well. In fact, their web page has very good reference to many of the different computer vision tasks. What are the good references on that? Also, I like this image classification, recognition, and so on. Good data sets are important to develop methods. So you should know where they are, what they are. And then some information for mini projects is also put. So probably in this week or next week, I will give a class on what kind of mini projects you can take. And you will be filling the information shortly, and I encourage you to start that as early as possible. Thank you. And if you have any questions, you can ask now for a couple of minutes. Any quick questions? Okay. Thank you then. Bye.